Hi, it's Kyle and Sean, the two disabled dudes. We launched our first episode a week ago and wanted to thank everyone for the kind and encouraging feedback over the past week.
We received so much feedback by text, email, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Thank you and keep it coming.
The best way to help the podcast is to visit us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Subscribe and leave a review.
You can find links to all these review options on our website, twodisableddudes.com.
Thank you and enjoy the show. You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm Kyle Bryant.
And I'm Sean Baumstark. And together, we're navigating life with disability. Hey there, what's up? It's Sean Baumstark right over here. And right over there.
This is Kyle Bryant. Yep.
Thanks for tuning in today, folks. And Kyle, thanks for being so kind to get on the phone with me again. Since that's kind of the agreement we have.
Yeah, that's what we do, man.
How's it going, man? What's going on with you?
Just everything all at once. That's what I have a friend that says that every time I say what's up, he's like, everything all at once. I'm like, all right. Anyway,
all right, well, see you later.
Yeah. No, I've been staying. I haven't been on the bike recently. On the trike. I had a injury, like an overuse injury. It wasn't like I fell off my trike or sprained something or whatever. But I was having a problem with one of my hip flexors, and every time I would ride, it would just get worse. So the only way to make it better is just to rest it. And so I've been off the trike for a little while, and then you take 3 weeks off, and then it turns into 8,
Yep.
So, yeah.
It sounds to me like two things. Number one, you're getting old.
Yes, that's a good point.
The other thing that came to mind was right at the beginning of that, you said, it's not like I fell off my trike or something. And I'm curious, how does one fall off their trike? Like, yours is not just a tricycle or a trike, it's a recumbent. So it's pretty low.
Yeah.
How does one fall off?
I've flipped my trike probably
Really?
like 4 times, and one of those times I was going like 20 miles an hour.
Jeez.
And so it generated some pretty significant road rash. That was quite a while ago, but that's the main way, because at high speeds the trike is not, it's stable if you don't make any quick movements,
Sure.
You have to pretty deliberately make a big movement, make it flip, but it's not out of the question to do that,
Sure.
So.
Okay. Well.
Now
Something tells me, because I've never ridden one, I'd probably flip it pretty easily. Moving right along.
What have you been up to lately, Sean?
Just working, mostly hanging out. I'm doing a drug trial right now, or a clinical trial for the disease, and working. I work for a grocery company. I've been doing that or with them for about 7 years, so my day job consists of me running around a grocery store mostly, and it's a lot of fun. I also get to do some training of new hires, so teach a class here and there and teach people our culture and our expectations and kind of how we do business. So it's a lot of fun. That keeps me busy.
Awesome. Real quick, so what's going on with the clinical trial? Like, how the clinical trial that you're participating in, like, how often do you have to go down to LA or something, right?
Yeah, this particular one is being facilitated. The closest one for me is at UCLA. I'm in Northern California, so I just jump on a simple Southwest flight, go down to UCLA. It's been, I think, of the course of 16 weeks, it's 9 visits.
All right. And you, like, when you go there, you, like, give blood and, like, ride a bike and
So,
what do you...
yeah, what's interesting about this one is every visit's slightly different, but for sure it's at the very least blood draws because they're looking to see how the drug is either impacting or affecting my body, how it's sticking, how it's not sticking, whatever is going on. So I take the drug at home. It's a capsule. They send me home with it every visit, and I just stay on a routine throughout my time at home. Then I go there and we do vitals, blood draws, and then I think every second visit, it's become the exercise bike, and they kind of monitor my lung capacity and my breathing and heart function and performance with the drug in mind. Or I don't really know how to word that right. Well, this particular drug is helping increase I guess performance, energy, things of that nature as it relates to, well, I guess as it relates to one's energy. So one of the things the bike is helping determine is my performance changing at all while I'm on this particular capsule.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Cool.
You know what's interesting about flying to UCLA though? There was one trip. I feel like I'm getting better in mastering the whole 1 day trips or whatever it takes to get down there and back. I flew down there one morning. It's an hour and 10-minute flight from Sacramento to Burbank. And I got in an Uber. Okay. This is bright and early one morning. And Uber from Burbank to UCLA, which I believe is, I don't know, maybe 15 miles, maybe 20, somewhere around there. Uber took an hour and 20 minutes, 10 minutes
Holy cow.
longer than the actual flight from here to LA, which is, upwards of 400 miles.
Hooray for LA traffic.
It's ridiculous. I'm glad I don't have to put up with it every day.
Okay, wait. So before we jump into the theme for today, I want to tell you a story. So I took a train down to Washington, D.C. to visit some friends. And I had to get to where I was meeting them in a cab. So from the train station in Washington, D.C., I can either like get a cab or an Uber. This time I chose to just grab a cab. It was right there. I was like, all right, I'll just get in. So the driver did not speak any English. And not only that, but it was very clear that he was not interested in helping me with my wheelchair. And so I'm like putting my chair in the back and like trying not to fall on the ground.
Jeez.
And some nice person comes up and just like helps me take it apart and puts it in the car and whatever. So I get in and I'm like, all right, 1100 6th Street. And so I'm, whatever, on my phone and stuff as we're going. We get there, and I look around. He's like, here we are. I look around. I'm like, this is not where we're supposed to be. So I look at my phone. I try to show him, like, this is not it. He's like, no, this is it. We're here. I'm like, no, dude. And it got to the point where I was like, all right, whatever, I don't want to argue anymore. So I'm like, okay. So he pulls my chair and my wheels out. They're all taken apart and puts them on the ground. I step out of the car and like I expect him to be like, all right, how do you do this? Like, show me how to put the
Sure.
wheels on or whatever. It was clear once again that he was not interested in helping me. So
Wow.
I sat down on the ground and I'm like, all right, thanks, dude. And he gets in his car and drives off. And I'm sitting
Oh
on the
my
ground
god.
with my chair all taken apart. Whatever. It's fine. Like, I put it together and get in my chair. And I'm not even in the place that I wanted to be. So from there, I called an Uber, and
Oh
the
my gosh.
the guy was super nice, helped me with everything, took me to where I wanted to go, and like, oh my gosh! And so I finally got there, but it was just like, okay, I don't think I'm ever taking a cab again.
That's
I'll do Uber from now on.
such a world of difference. How much did you pay the taxi to get you where you didn't want to be? Do you remember?
Don't rub it in, dude. $10, and then the Uber cost me $6.
How far away were you from your preferred destination?
Probably like I was like it was like a 15-minute ride.
Oh man.
But yeah, it was ridiculous.
I can totally see you just sitting on the curb like, okay, well, I guess this is it.
I know, and I really wish I would have like taken a selfie or like a video or
You
something
should have.
just to document it. But I was so like just disoriented, just like what just happened? I'm sitting here on the ground in the middle of Washington D.C. Like I need to get to where I wanted to go. Yeah, it was crazy.
Did you put your chair back together and then sit in it and wait for Uber, or did you just leave it taken apart waiting for Uber?
No, I put it together. I got in it and stuff, so the guy didn't like pull up, and I was just sitting on the ground,
Because he probably would have left. Like, no.
Yeah, no, it was nuts.
Dude, that's hilarious, but also so sad.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah,
help but laugh.
but
Sorry.
you know what? I think it sort of relates to what we're talking about today. It's like all about like reacting to situations, and like I could have reacted by like freaking out. I did a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but like feeling sorry for myself and sitting on the
Sure.
ground like weeping, because if there was a time to weep, it would have been then. But but I was like, all right, whatever. Like I need to get there. That's the first priority. So that's kind of what drove me.
You
So.
know what's crazy is not. You made the distinction that he didn't speak English, which to me doesn't make a difference. If you see somebody struggling, like that person that helped you, they just help. Whether you speak that language or not, I think it's universal when you see somebody struggling and you have the ability to help, why not help? I
That's a
am
good
kind
point.
of curious about your cab driver. When you were struggling to put your chair in the car and stay standing up and get in the car yourself, was he just sitting in the car, or is he like standing
Dude,
staring at you?
he did not get out of the car.
Wow.
He was sitting in the driver's seat, and like it was like a Kia Soul was the cab, and so I opened the hatchback or the like back of the car, and this person that was just like standing on the curb like came over to help me and stuff, and the guy was sitting in the car the whole time, and you're totally right. Like, that's not a language. Like, help somebody else out, you know?
Yeah, that's
So,
insane.
yeah.
Well, I hope you've learned your lesson. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know why you would even think, yeah, a cab, that's a good idea. Like,
Yeah,
cabs were good ideas like 10 years ago. Definitely not today.
yeah, no, I will never take a cab again. I mean, the reason I took it was sitting right there. But that was definitely a bad choice.
Well, uh, all the credit to Uber then. And Uber, if you have any interest in sponsoring this podcast, you know where to find us.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Kyle, I think you make a great point that it really does kind of help lead into our conversation that we want to have today. And it's really all about um, reacting to the situation you're in and choosing the best reaction or choosing the best attitude you can possibly come up with in the midst of pain or sadness or things going wrong. And I'm glad you shared that funny and embarrassing story because it really does capture the essence of what we're talking about today, and that's really navigating the disability that you and I are up against, or any disability for that matter. So, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad I thought of that. Like I had kind of erased it from my mind because I was like, it's not even worth thinking
So
about anymore.
traumatized.
But yeah.
Well, I think what's great about it is, I know how I would have reacted. I would have been furious. I would have been on Yelp. I would have called the cab's 1-800 number. I would have gone crazy. But like you said, in the midst of the activity, you're still stuck on the side of the curb, and you're still looking at what in the world just happened, and you're having to make up your mind, like, what am I gonna do, pout and go home, or still smile and make the most of it because I got dinner plans and I'm not gonna let this ruin my night. And that's just one incident, but let's talk about life for you and I. Let's talk about how disability has become a challenge, or is a challenge, and what you've done to react to it.
Yeah. So as we talked about in our first episode, in like our welcome episode, you know, uh, Sean, we talked about our diagnosis each individually, and how that affected our lives, and just sitting and going, all right, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? And really, it's a moment to moment decision to like do something more, right? And not accept what you think is the situation, but seek something a little bit more. And um Sean, I know that you have a story that I'm thinking of, kind of about your diagnosis, and how you sort of confronted what you were going to do with the rest of your life. Do you mind sharing that?
No, not at all. I assume you're talking about when I actually sat down with the doctor and they explained everything to me.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So, I was diagnosed with Friedrich's ataxia in 2007, and I'd gone to. In fact, my diagnosis came over the phone, but the way the neurologist presented it, it was as if it was no big deal. Um, you're testing positive for Friedrich's ataxia, which at the time didn't, those words and how to say it didn't click. So she was like, "But hey, I've got you an appointment next week. You'll see a geneticist, and they'll explain it to you." And so in my head, I'm like, "Oh well, if it's worth, if you can't tell me and I'm going to wait a week to get an explanation." And the kind of the way she delivered it was kind of very nonchalant, so I just didn't think of it. Anyway, went to the appointment with my geneticist, and of course, they broke it down. And the way he broke it down was almost the same way Google or WebMD would break it down. very very doomsday-ish. It just talked about all the things that could go wrong and talked about all the things that are most likely to go wrong. So it was interesting and very in my opinion a very realistically negative doomsday style conversation.
So, do you remember some of the specific things they said that were pretty bad?
Yeah, some of the things that stick out to me is he actually started talking about not being able to walk. He said, you'll probably end up in a wheelchair in maybe 5 years or so. Like he started putting time frames on it. But what stuck out to me the most was moving for. He said, from here on out, you might want to look at buying a home that is a single level and start thinking about installing handrails and different little things in your house that you're gonna need soon. So you may as well start doing it. And in my head, I'm like, dude, I walk just fine. And what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
so beyond that, he also started talking about support groups. He said you might want to, reach out to a support group here and there, or I think he gave me or offered to give me some names and phone numbers of different support group type arrangements, although he didn't know anybody else specifically with this condition. So he just encouraged me to start thinking about support groups. And I remember specifically telling him to change the subject because I didn't feel the need for it. I told him I appreciate the info, but that's not in my cards right now. So what else do you want to talk about? Because you're wasting your time. And at that time I was surrounded by, and I still am, by amazing people, very encouraging, very loving, and I just didn't feel alone in terms of I gotta figure this out by myself. I felt alone
Yeah.
because I knew nobody else I knew would understand this, but I
Right.
didn't feel alone in terms of, being cast out to the fields or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like the neurologist was like trying to tell you everything all at the same time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
yeah, that was something that you would have, that would be useful to know after like, you know, several months of like figuring out what this means, right? Like then maybe you could reach out to other people, but he just unloaded everything on
It
you, it
was
sounds like.
yeah, it was definitely a brain dump of here's everything you need to know from start to finish. Um anyway, to move on with that story, the hour was up or my time with him was coming to an end and I started to leave. And as I'm walking out of the building, down the hall is when it started to, sink in. Nobody else was talking to me anymore. It was just me and my thoughts as I walked back to the elevator, which is how I got to the third floor. And I pushed the button, and I'm just kind of waiting for the elevator to show up. And that's when it starts to dawn on me as I turn around and see the sign for the stairwell, and I'm sitting there waiting for the elevator, and it hits me that this guy just told me that someday stairs won't even be an option. Like I won't have the choice to use the stairs. The elevator will be the only thing, and when that dawned on me, I chose to take the stairs all the way down three flights, which I know isn't that much, but it's a handful. And even though I was fully capable in the moment, that it started to hit me that what, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can right now because that guy just told me that someday I wouldn't have a choice and these things wouldn't be in the cards for me. And I said, screw that. I'm gonna figure out what I can do right now and just keep doing what I can simply because of having the ability in the moment. And
Yeah.
really, Kyle, I think part of the reason why you asked about that story and I share about it is the whole point of you and I getting together and having a conversation with microphones on is to talk about how we have navigated our disability, how we're redefining the different challenges and the perspectives we're up against. And hopefully, in the midst of that, maybe other people can help us figure it out as we go. And maybe we can help others figure it out as they go. Disability is new for you, it's me, it's all of a sudden it's, hey, you're not going to be able to walk someday, put handrails in your house. And to me, that was such an overwhelming reality check that it's helpful to talk about it.
Yeah, and with FA, since it's a progressive debilitating disease, like it's definitely way different for me now than it was when I was first diagnosed, and same for you too. So we're constantly having to reevaluate our own situation and figure out, reevaluate like the view of our future and the view of ourselves, and how
Sure.
that all fits together. And so yeah, like you said, it's good to talk about that stuff, and that's what this is all about.
You're totally right on. And I think one of the things that's been most encouraging for me in our friendship, the film The Ataxian definitely showcases this train of thought. But you've always said life is about how we react. And I've quoted you probably 100 times on that. And it's been said 100 different ways and different iterations of that. Really, that truly is what life is about. There's different statistics, and we've all heard it that life. I think there's one out there that says life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond or how you react or what you make of it. And I think that's totally true and valuable to talk about in our case up against disability. The cab driver left you on the curb. There's plenty of ways and reasons to react in a manner that doesn't help move forward. Um, but let's talk about little ways or little things that you've done in order to move forward. Let's take it back a little bit to when you were diagnosed, and some people that listen know that you've become really the poster child of sorts for this disease.
Dude, did you just call me a child?
Yeah, I did. Poster child, which kind of makes you like the male version of Britney Spears. Sorry, I don't really know where that comes from, but
I'll take it.
let's
Wait.
let's talk about how you've reacted and what you've done to. Uh, well, I used the phrase earlier, but what you've done to navigate.
Yeah, and so that takes me back to the very beginning, like you said. When I was diagnosed, um, when you were diagnosed, I think we hung out like 2 or 3 weeks after, which I thought was crazy because I couldn't even figure out how to talk about it at all for like 2 years after I was diagnosed. And so one day, about 2 years after I was diagnosed, I was sitting in the living room with my parents, and and we were actually having a conversation about FA, and I was actually confronting it head on, and it was super scary, and just to come to grips with the future and what it might be, and how this disease might affect me in my life. And I said, oh, well, this isn't the worst thing that happened to anyone. And, I was looking for pity. I was looking for people to feel sorry for me, for my parents. And my dad looks at me in the eye and he goes, yeah, well, this is happening to you, and it's happening to us. so let's deal with it. And that was really the turning point when we all started taking it head on. Not only, you know, that I could face FA head on, but like that I finally realized that it's not me. Like this is happening to all of us. My whole family, all my friends, all of our extended family, it's not just me. And so let's stare it down and let's do something about it. Even though obviously at that time we didn't know what we are gonna do, but let's figure this out and let's figure it out together. And that was an amazing turning point in my life right there.
That's huge, especially when you think about being, what, 19 years old by that time?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
which is still pretty young to be dying. Well, it's young for most anything, but certainly really young to be told um, you're losing your abilities to do much, and eventually you're gonna lose your life early. And I know, Kyle, you and I have been fortunate and blessed to be diagnosed later in life than a lot of the different people that we've met over the years, and I know you certainly know more people than me, but typically, and maybe you know the stats, I think most people diagnosed with FA are diagnosed before they're 15. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the stats say, the majority of people are diagnosed between the ages of 5 and 15.
So I can't imagine being 8 years old and you start seeing things go wrong, and then you're told just how bad it is, or maybe you're not told. I don't know how. Maybe people delayed that information when you're that young. I don't know, but still, the way that tweaks with your mind and the way it really discourages somebody in that at that age, or discourages anybody really. But
I think it's important to point out that FA, we're talking a lot about Friedreich's ataxia, for obvious reasons. You have it and I have it. And I think it's important to point out that it affects different people in different ways. So I was diagnosed at age 17. Sean, you were 26, I believe, right?
I was 25, but it was right before. It was like a week before my 26th birthday. So
So
either one.
So kids that are diagnosed at age 5, 6, are much more severely affected. I think it's just important to know that like you're not listening to the total devastation of this disease. Like, yeah, me and Sean sound like we're a little bit drunk, because of the way it affects our speech, but you know that's all you can hear from us. I think at the same time, like recognizing that everyone is dealing with a different situation, and it could be seen as more challenging or less challenging. I think the principles that we talk about apply to every situation, no matter how severe the disease or the challenge is.
Sure.
It's important to find the best response to it and realize that what is in our control is how we respond to any situation that comes our way.
Yeah, definitely. So uh, we can talk about that for a little bit. There are a lot of things that are out of our control and maybe always will be. But the things that are in our control, I think that's where we build our identity. That's where we define how life is meant to be lived by you and I, or by us as individuals. Um, so let's talk a little bit about maybe what some of those right choices might be, or not right, but strong choices, because it's going to be right or wrong or different for everybody. But like you said, we talk about FA because that's what we're familiar with and that's what we're living with. But how we react is so much more than just that disease. It's a way of life. It's a philosophy. It's the way we tackle anything we're up against, whether it's a disease or being stranded by a cab driver or whatever it may be, getting a flat tire in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, on your bike, whatever it is. The whole point of us getting together and chatting is to encourage and talk about how we react when things are rough.
And so, some of the things that I look at when dealing with the FA, we were talking about earlier that it's a constantly changing thing, and it's constantly requiring us to respond in different ways. And a couple of the big transitions for me while dealing with the FA were obviously the transition to using a wheelchair. I was walking until about 2009. I started using a wheelchair about 10%, 10% of the time, then 20, then 30, and then now I use a wheelchair about 95% of the time, maybe 99. I stand to like brush my teeth and do dishes and stuff, but other than that, I'm sitting down. Anyway, I just think there's so much emotional baggage that comes with decision to start using a wheelchair, and how is it going to affect? Like, I'm going to be able to do way less because I'm sitting down. Like, that's what you think. And in reality, for me, I know for lots of other people, it has proved the exact opposite. Like, I'm able to do way more when I'm sitting in my wheelchair than struggling to stand up and stuff. And I think it's kind of well, what do you think, Sean? Because I mean, I feel like you're I don't know, where are you at with the wheelchair discussion? I don't think we've ever really talked about this before.
I mean, I'll talk about it all day. I'm still independent in terms of mobility and getting around. I stumble often. I lean on walls and shelves and towel racks and whatever might be around to keep myself up. I haven't had any major falls, so I still feel like it's progressing slow for me, and I'm a little ways away from a wheelchair. But I make a comment, and I've made the comment before. I feel mentally okay with the diagnosis and the prognosis that someday I'll need to transition and different little things won't be feasible for me. And I feel okay with that. But if it's not here yet, I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. That's not my reality today. So instead of preparing for those moments, I'd rather live in the moment now and tackle whatever I can instead of like I don't spend my time on Google trying to find the best deal for a wheelchair down the road simply because I know someday I'm gonna need it. Now I probably should, like I should probably research how to go about doing that, but I just don't. That's
No,
not
well, I think that you've got the support you need when that time comes, Like
mm-hmm,
you can call me up or you can call any number of your friends up and be like, "All right, how do I do this?" It's time.
for sure.
And
And there's a part of me that hopes somebody like you or Sam or anybody else that I might know maybe has an extra wheelchair they can just give me.
uh, you're gonna want your own.
Yeah.
You'll there. So when thinking about transitioning to wheelchairs specifically, let's use that as an example. For me, I think of it like, and it was, I didn't think like this before I started using wheelchair, but in hindsight, I feel like it's advantageous to stay objective
Mm-hmm.
and to realize that there are things I need to do. The point of life is not to walk down the street or to walk anywhere. Like, that's not the point of life. It's something else. It's whatever's important to you or the people you're around. And you don't necessarily need to get around on 2 feet to make that happen.
True.
And I didn't know that as I was transitioning to wheelchair. It's clear now. But I just think in every situation, staying objective and like realizing that that's not the point. To be able-bodied is not the point of life. It's how you it's what you get done and how you affect other people and how you get stuff done together.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
I like the way you put that. It actually makes me think of one of my favorite quotes. It's a long one, so I don't have it memorized. But we talked about it at the beginning of our race across America. It's written in a couple different notebooks and journals that we've had over the years, or at least that I've had, and the experiences with you and the writing. Um, but it's the uh, Theodore Roosevelt speech where he talks about it not being the critic who counts, or all these different things. He makes a point to say the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. And I think you make a really good point. Life isn't about walking or running or different abilities. Life is about being in the mix and just going for it, trying to figure it out and affecting and sharing life with the people that are important to you and the people you love. So you saying that reminds me of that quote of, it's really not about your abilities or disabilities. It's really about your willingness to just figure it out as you go and get dirty and messy through the process.
I agree. I agree. So I think for me, the best example of somebody who seems to remain objective and realize that physical abilities literally don't matter. And it's about how you affect other people, is Christopher Reeve. I read his book a few years ago, and I'm just I think of it often and the words he had, but the main thing I think of is he accomplished so much after his injury. He was injured in a horseback riding competition, and he got injured. He broke his neck in a jump. The horse stopped and he kept going. And anyway, he literally couldn't move a finger. His injury was so high on his neck that he literally couldn't move at all. I remember in the book he talked about like he would just look at his finger and be in like just mentally try to make it move, and it took him like a couple of years or something of like working at it every day, but he finally made it move. But anyway, the point is that he accomplished so much while he was injured. He literally couldn't move, and the point is that physical abilities don't matter. While he was injured, he continued to act in a few places. He was a producer. He was an activist for spinal cord injury. He did all speeches all over the place. He appeared at the Oscars. He hosted the Paralympics. He was the author of 2 best-selling books. And all of this was obviously not because of his physical abilities. It was because of how he affected other people and who he was. And his physical abilities were not him, and he was still the same person. And his book is called Still Me. But anyway, he's a really good example of sort of the principle of objective thinking, and like there are things that he wanted to get done and he still did it even though he couldn't move.
Yeah, he's an incredible story for sure. That's very encouraging to still live life and pursue things that are valuable and important despite the injury and despite the challenges. So thank you for sharing. I think that he's an incredible example of a good way to respond and react to his circumstance.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, I think really you and I could talk forever, and maybe we should wrap this particular episode up. This idea of just navigating life in terms of disability and making the most out of our situation, which really is what you and I are doing and what we're encouraging other people in the community to do. I'm reminded also, we talked earlier about uh, younger folks being diagnosed with FA, and I recently watched a little clip, or actually a video from a young man. His name is Jake. He's 10 years old. He was diagnosed with FA, and he got it online, and with his parents' help, he's got a little YouTube video that explains what life is like for him and what FA means to him and what he's doing in spite of it. And one of the things he says in the video is he's talking about all these different things he likes to do and hobbies and adventures that he likes to go on with his Boy Scouts and different little things he can do. Anyway, he makes the point to say when life changes for him and he's unable physically to do those things, he just says, and then, well, maybe I'll just find a different thing to do. And to me, that's so encouraging to hear from somebody so young up against something so devastating and terrible, but he still has that mentality like Christopher Reeve or other people that we could probably talk about and look up. That mentality of, you know what? It is what it is. I'm going to make the most of it. And my reaction is going to be this. I'm going to find another way to have fun. I'm going to find another way to be a kid. I'm going to find a way to accomplish despite my condition. And what we'll do is post that in our episode notes. So I would encourage our listeners to find the link. It'll be available online. You can go take a look at Jake's story and hopefully find some encouragement and, for me, even some inspiration to hear this young man talk about what life is like for him.
Yep. And so people can go to twodisableddudes.com and look for this episode, which is 001, and that video will be posted on the page. So before we go, Sean, I think, were you gonna ask people to submit a question or their comments or whatever?
Yeah, one thing we'd love to do is really engage with friends and family and different people involved in the community. We're so thankful and I guess at this point really hopeful that people listen. And one of the things, one of the ways we want to connect and be involved is through the website. We're going to post the episodes and there'll be a place for folks to comment. We're also going to link or you can find our Facebook and Twitters and different platforms that Kyle and I use individually. But one thing we'd love to hear from you is talking about how you and what you're doing to navigate life in your own right. What are you doing to navigate your disability or your circumstance, whatever it is you're up against? And we'd love for you to share. You can do that via email or something a little more private, or just go on the post for this podcast and leave a comment. We'd love to engage with you there, or even feature some of the feedback on future podcasts. So the question we have for you from this particular episode is just that. How have you navigated your disability, or how are you navigating life for yourself, whatever circumstance you find yourself in? So take a minute, think about that, and get online and give us some of your thoughts, would you please?
Awesome. Sweet, dude. Well, I'm pretty stoked on this episode, and I am really looking forward to hearing from people, and continuing to talk about this stuff. I think that what we talked about today, it's going to be a theme throughout everything we talk about on this podcast. And I'm really excited to see what happens.
Me too. So thanks for listening to me, Kyle, and of course to all of our, few of our friends out there right now. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, thank you. See you next time.
Yeah, you will.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. To find this episode and links to some of the stuff we talked about today, find us online at twodisableddudes.com or subscribe on iTunes.
We'd like to hear from you and feature your feedback and questions on future podcasts. Be sure to visit us at twodisableddudes.com to find our contact info and connect on social media.
Special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins, who also composed the music.
We'll share a new podcast every other week. We hope you'll listen and share with a friend. Until next time, keep living with urgency.